I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our masterclass this morning. So our masterclass, as you know, is titled Personal Agility, Leadership Capabilities in Uncertain Times. So I think it's very appropriate. So we're delighted to have John here with us. So I just want to give you a couple of minutes or a quick overview on the proceedings for our session this morning. So Owen and I are going to say just a little hello and introduce John and the session to you. John is then going to come in and give us some great insights for about 20-25 minutes. But what we'd like to do is invite you to ask some questions. So please use chat if you can. And John is delighted to take some questions at the end of the session. And so I will share that. So please use chat. We are recording the session, by the way. So that doesn't give you an option to leave. So we'd love you to stay. But just to say, we will be sending this recording as well to you afterwards. So the other thing we're delighted today is to be able to announce that we are launching our Learning to Lead in Uncertain Times program. And this is a new executive leadership program in partnership with Harvest and DCU Business School. So we're also going to be telling a little bit more about that program as well. And Owen will be taking, I suppose, a deeper dive into the content of that. So we'd be delighted to chat to you about that afterwards. And John indeed is one of the tutors on this program. So it's great to have him here today. So what I want to just quickly talk to you about is just a quick introduction to the program before I hand over to Owen. And Harvest and DCU have developed this unique program. And I suppose from our perspective, in terms of its uniqueness, the topic itself in terms of uncertainty it's nothing even to do with COVID. It's just the environment that we as leaders work in. So in terms of learning to lead in a VUCA context is really important. So this program is really about developing the skills, knowledge and mindsets to help people thrive and leaders to be successful in this environment. And this partnership with DCU and Harvest really, I suppose, in terms of content, but also in relation to the panel we've put together, we think is very unique. And Owen, as I said, will be talking a little bit more about the online element and the nature of it. But really what we've done is, as a collaboration of academic tutors and our top academic tutors, and you'll see some familiar faces there. John indeed is there, David Collins, Finian Buckley, Mel Rosa, I'm sure you'll recognize some, and then our Harvest team. So what we're going to do is give a learning experience that will ensure that they're the most up-to-date research, but also that it's very much grounded in how to embed it and apply it in the leader's world and context. So I'm hoping that you'll see some of that this morning with John's presentation and also with further information from Owen. So what I'm going to do now is just hand over to Owen, and Owen is going to give you a little bit more about the program and introduce you to John. So over to you, Owen.
Thanks, Nicola, and good morning, everybody. My name is Owen Stack. I'm a program director on this new program with Harvest. Like Nicola said, we're very excited about this program, and you can see on the slide here, it just gives you an overview of some of the content that the program is going to be capturing. I'm going to give you more detail after John gives us his presentation. So later on this morning, we'll go through some of this in more detail. But essentially what we're doing on this program is that DCU and Harvest, we're combining our expertise, our experience and our understanding of business to bring about this new program offering. And it is designed, as Nicola said, it's targeted at leaders seeking a global and up-to-date perspective on leadership and how to lead in an ongoing VUCA context. So the program is going to be online first, given everything that is happening at the moment. And it's going to articulate the key requirements for that effective leadership role. More importantly, it's going to highlight the necessity of leadership mindset to extend beyond the immediacy of uncertain times and imagining a new world of possibilities for the leader in their organization post that uncertainty period. It's a unique blend of the renowned academic tutors from DCU. Nicola gave a snapshot of some of those who are going to be involved in the program next year. And then we've obviously teamed together with a world-class industry-leading learning specialist from Harvest as well. So between the two of us, we're going to deliver a program that will encompass the most up-to-date research-based content and also experiential sessions to ensure ease of application and implementation of learning and the knowledge and skills acquired. So this morning, what we're going to do is give you a little bit of a flavour for what the program will cover. I'm delighted to introduce one of my colleagues, Dr. John McMackin. John is an assistant professor with the Work Psychology and Strategy Group in DCU Business School. He's also the chair of the school's master's program in talent leadership and HR strategy. John has a very rich career background, including he clocked up a lot of time in the private sector before joining academia, and both in working in private industry and then working in the business school. He's had a huge amount of touch points with industry clients, and those touch points and experience continues in his work today in his teaching and research. So John lectures on and researches on leadership skills, personal and organizational agility, organizational innovation and performance management. And John, on the program, John will be presenting a masterclass on day 2 of the program, which will be covering some of the areas that John will present to you shortly. Just before I let John take over, I also want to invite all of you there, if you have any questions that you would like to ask John at the end of the session, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat function. So you can supply those questions using the chat function, and we'll pick them up then at the end. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to yourself, John.
Thank you, Owen, and thanks to you and your colleagues, and indeed to Nicola and her colleagues for inviting me along. I'm very much looking forward to sharing some thoughts I've been having over the period of the particularly during the crisis. I suppose has given us all time to reflect, and prior to the onset of the crisis, which has really kept me mostly in my home environment since March. I was working with Dave Collins for about a year on a project which was about the future of work and how skills will be developed in particular in the future world of work. And we talked to a lot of organizations and a lot of people working in organizations about the future of work. What strikes me in hindsight is that nobody mentioned a pandemic as featuring in the future of work in all of that research we did. And I suppose that's a reminder that we're not very good at predicting the future. And in fact, we're really bad at it. And so we'll probably get good now at preparing for the last crisis, the next pandemic, but who knows what the next crisis is going to be. So in a world where we have no idea what's going to happen next, and that's pretty much true for all of us, how do you develop leadership? What capabilities do leaders need to have, and how do you develop them? And my reflection on this and my work with others around it led me to think a lot about agility, not just at the organizational level, which is familiar to many of you, but also at the individual level. And so I'm going to, in this conversation, if you only have a minute, then here's what I'm going to talk about. Here are the headlines. The skills needed for effectiveness in most work roles, especially leadership roles, are changing rapidly. And we have some good data around that. There's a good deal of evidence to base predictions around that on. We also have, I suppose the second point I'm going to make is that while organizational agility, the evidence for the need for that is very powerful. There's been less attention to the question of individual agility. How does that work? What does it look like? What would it mean to be personally agile? And that I think is something that both leaders and employees more generally in organizations will need to develop. And the third point I'm going to try and address in this short introduction is really the question of how do you develop that capability? How do you develop agility? It's not necessarily through the same development process that we'd have used in the past for more generic management skills, and that's what we call competencies. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about vertical development, and we'll talk a lot more about all of these things in the workshop in March. So this slide highlights some very recent research. So Dave and I had done a lot of analysis of predictions about what future skills would be needed in our work prior to COVID. But what's very valuable is the World Economic Forum, which is a very authoritative kind of source for this type of work, has just published in October their adjustment of their predictions for skills in the top future skills needs. coming out of COVID. So this research takes account of what's happened during COVID. And so the list has changed, contains many of the same skills that would have been predicted as growing in importance prior to COVID, but it also incorporates some new perspectives. And while a long list like that on the right is a little bit hard to absorb, the categories on the left are probably easier to remember. So a number of these skills are, as indicated by the color coding, are problem solving. Others are self-management. The third, working with people, which would have always have been important anyway, and the fourth around technology use and development. So these are the categories of skills that this research suggests will become more important. And so in looking at that, we think about, well, really what's emerged during the crisis as new to the list, if you like, of the top 10 are skills in self-management, particularly around active learning, resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. And if you look at the categories of skill, the types of skill, one of the arguments I'm going to make here is that problem solving, self-management, and working with people are all components of personal agility. So we're not just kind of picking a list of things out of the air here. These are very solid predictions. The other thing is that what's really important to note is that there's no do-nothing option here. Organizations have no choice but to address the reskilling of their workforce, and leaders have no choice but to address their own reskilling, their personal reskilling, and those of the people they lead, because the time frame here is no longer a kind of sometime in the future technology is going to impact how we work. This is now this is for 2025. The workshop we're going to have about this will be taking place in 2021. That is a very short time frame in the business world, in particular when you're talking about reskilling 50% of your workforce. In fact, that's a conservative estimate because it varies hugely by sector. So there's no do-nothing option here. And so we have to think about, okay, well, if there's no do-nothing option, what are we going to do? And the focus of this conversation is really around at the leadership level, and that can be in large or small organizations, but as leaders, what capabilities do we need? And there's no question that the pandemic, the experience of the pandemic, has taught us a lot about this and has shed new light on what it means to be a leader and to be effective in a leadership role. And one of the more recent studies on this, again, a post-pandemic data, which comes from McKinsey, highlights a few characteristics that they've identified in interviewing CEOs about their own leadership journey during the pandemic. And there's a few quotes here that I think are kind of worth considering in terms of just what light it sheds on how leaders are seeing themselves in terms of how they've been successful in the crisis. One is thinking bigger and faster. And the quote you can read, but so many people I speak to talk about how they've surprised themselves and how they're with their colleagues around how they could adapt just so quickly during a crisis. When even if you take out my own context, the university, we converted from classroom-based learning to online learning virtually overnight in April. If we'd sat down to plan that, we would have had at least a 3-year plan. The question is, can you sustain that capability, that adaptability into the future when the environment isn't demanding it of you? That's one of the things that leadership has been thinking about. I won't go through all of these, but being is as important as doing. So it's not really about what you can tell people; it's how you are with them, and that's the core responsibility of leaders to build morale, to respond to the needs of people for empathy and support during these periods. And finally, showing vulnerability. And many of you will be familiar with Brené Brown's work on this, but showing your humanity in that the more human you are with people, the more they trust and empathize with you, and the more empathy they lend to you. So it's not about being some of the characteristics we would have associated with leaders in the past. These are very different characteristics. I'm not saying this is a scientific study and here's the answer to what leaders need to be at all. It isn't. These are anecdotes from an anecdotal type study. And I also think that if you asked, if you did another study with different CEOs, you come up with different results. Always a problem with leadership. And I would also suggest that if you ask these same CEOs the same questions next year, you'll come up with a different set of answers. So these aren't skills, really. So what are they? They're a kind of capability to respond to the environment that I would describe as a personal agility. And so the question is, if that is the case, these aren't things you can say, these are what these specifics of that might change next year. Can we say what leadership, what personal agility means in a leadership context? And if so, can we also identify how to develop them? I'd like to talk for a minute about how to develop ways of developing skills and how that's changing and needs to change further for a more agile world. This slide I borrowed from Aidan Harney, an alumnus of our Masters in HR Strategy from a number of years ago, and now Dr. Aidan Harney, who is involved in leadership development at Intel. And he shared this slide with us a little while back. And this is really around vertical versus horizontal development. So the concept here is that there are two dimensions, two vectors to leadership development. The horizontal one is the one that we tend to have worked on most assiduously in the past, around capabilities, around competencies. So knowledge, skills, and abilities, a blend of those. And you add more competencies. You'll need more competencies as you move up the organizational ladder. The point of this slide and the point of the argument here is that there's another dimension to leadership development, which is vertical. And that's how you equip yourself with a new lens with which to view the world. And when you do this, the way in which you deploy the capabilities, the competencies you have is different because you see the world differently. The analogy here is that it's like the difference between adding more apps to your laptop or your phone and upgrading the operating system. So the argument is that leaders, the development of personal agility, of the adaptability required to respond to environment is different in that it involves upgrading your operating system, upgrading your mindset, if you like. Another analogy that described this is really around on the one hand, I suppose we tend to think about skills development as pouring more into a vessel, as on the left hand side of this slide, but really a lot of people, once they achieve particularly middle management levels, they already know a lot of the stuff. They know how to communicate. They've been to workshops, they've done degrees, they've done master's degrees, they've done their MBAs. They know all the stuff, but they just can't be it. And so the limiting factor is not the content, but rather the leader's mindset and their adaptability to their environment. So we're talking about mindset, we're talking about mental models, we're talking about a different type of development, and I'll come back to that at the end. But for now, I just want to map this back to the question of agility. And so because my argument is people think of agile or lean and they say, oh, it's Kanban and it's value stream mapping and it's all sorts of interesting tools and techniques. But really agile is, in its most valuable form, is a mindset. It is not a set of tools. It's a way of thinking and developing ourselves and our organizations. And so I just want to focus on that for a couple of minutes. So I like this slide because it captures a dimension of agile that people forget. And it is that you think of agility and you think of maybe being like a greyhound. So startup organizations, a lot easier to be agile in a startup organization than it is to be in a global bureaucratic form of organization. So the point of agility is not that you can become small and agile, but that you can become agile at scale. And that's what this slide from a European bank is trying to capture, is that you should be able to, if you're truly agile, you should be able to operate with the speed and flexibility of a greyhound, but have the scale of an elephant. And and there's plenty of examples of this. In fact, Steve Dennings has now somewhat dated analysis in 2016, although I wish I'd bought all these stocks then. is that the agile management is a global movement that is transforming the world of work. And the 5 largest organizations on the planet, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, are recognizably agile. And if you think about how, probably how many times you've ordered through Amazon, if you certainly if you're living in my house, it's an alarming number, and how they've taken advantage of the crisis. But that didn't happen by accident. It happened because they had developed an agile capability that enabled them to take huge advantage of the totally unpredictable change in the environment. And those other organizations that are listed there haven't done too badly either. So the question then is, okay, that's at the organizational level. The question then becomes whether we can do this at the individual level as well. And here I have to give credit to the gentleman pictured here, who is Kevin MP, who is a good friend of ours in DCU and a close colleague of mine on some of the work I'm doing around this. And Kevin is Managing Director of Work Matters, but he developed this concept of personal agility in his master's thesis when he did it at the Irish Management Institute some years ago. And so Kevin has kind of developed a great deal of expertise around the concept and indeed how to develop this. And I'm happy to say that Kevin is going to has very generously agreed to join the workshop in March. And so he'll be able to bring that particular depth of understanding that he's developed over a number of years to the conversation we have. In fact, the next slide is from Kevin's own work. And so what it's suggesting is that the concept of agility needs to be considered at 3 levels. The organizational agility one, which many of you are familiar with and which I was referencing, and there's lots and lots of research around that and lots of consultancy and all sorts of support for developing it. And indeed, that's my own area of research as well. The team agility, again, you'll find a good deal of insights. Everything from the Toyota Way onwards has talked about a team agility. And of course, on the left-hand side of the diagram, we have leadership agility. So how does that? But leadership agility is missing a piece if it doesn't address what's on the bottom of the slide, which is personal agility. So what does it mean for leaders to lead an agile organization? It means that they have to be personally agile as well. And so the model of personal agility is focused on identifying what the components of that are. And this is the model that Kevin has developed, and it has 6 components. So really 2 domains is the term we use. And so on the right-hand side, you have this personal domain. So you have individual level self-developed characteristics around purposefulness, around learning, and around change orientation. And a learning mindset. Again, that word mindset comes through here. And on the left-hand side, you have more social skills involved engaging with others. So autonomy and empowerment, empowered teams, of course, being a key feature of agile organizations, relationship management and collaboration. And these are the characteristics that Kevin's research and others have identified and would associate strongly with agility in organizations. And so in fact, one of the things the model does is it breaks down these into behaviors. So the sample I've put on this slide here is change orientation. What's interesting to me is that I studied change management quite a lot, and I like the current quote from Novartis, in fact, where they are now saying, well, there is no organizational change, there is only individual change. And that really highlights the importance of having people who are personally agile, not only leading your organization, but working in all key roles in your organization. And so the change orientation, the behaviors in this help us to specify more clearly how we could identify change orientation in the people we lead and manage. And also, of course, it means that if we can break down, as we learned in the development of competencies, if we can break down these characteristics, these qualities down to behaviors, then we can measure them. And in fact, we're piloting with our MBA class, our executive MBA program, we're piloting a 360 program using Kevin's personal agility framework. And so as you can see on the right-hand side there, Josh Barrett, I hasten to add, is not a real person. But you can see on the right-hand side that you can, through a 360 feedback process, you can start to develop your awareness of where you are in terms of your current role, in terms of the deployment of these capabilities. Do people perceive you as agile? And without that feedback, you can't really develop and learn. So this is a very valuable input to developing personal agility. So as we look at personal agility and we think about it, saying, okay, personal agility is very important, we want to develop it, and we accept the argument that this captures a good deal of the future skills that people will need, then the question becomes, how do you do that? There's some really interesting work done by the Center for Creative Leadership and others around around vertical development. And I won't have time to go through this now, but this is something we're going to develop in some detail in the workshop. And Petrie and his colleagues at the Center for Creative Leadership, and indeed a number of other people, have explored this topic. But they frame it in terms of these three ways of developing. So heat experiences. Heat experiences, just to give you an example, would be something that's challenges your current way of thinking, that you can't respond using your current way of thinking. And so this might be a stretch assignment that takes you out of your comfort zone, but the criteria around it are fairly specific. It should be a first-time experience. The results should matter. There should be a chance of success and failure. There should be important people watching. So if you're doing this in a training course and nobody from your organization is there, it's probably not there's not as much heat as there would be as if your boss was standing looking at you. And so it should be uncomfortable to some extent. And so we'll develop our conversation around all three dimensions of these three dimensions of vertical development during the workshop in March. And I do think there's value here in changing how we see not only what we develop in terms of our adaptive capabilities and our agility, but also how we develop it. So just to wrap up then, agility and adaptability are vital for survival in an unpredictable world. Not just organizations, but their leaders and their people must become more personally agile. And personal agility is a set of skills, and there is a horizontal dimension to that, but it's also a mindset, and both horizontal and vertical development are required. And when in March, we're going to talk about, we're going to explore those skills in more detail. We'll build a deeper understanding of what agility, personal agility means, and what vertical development involves. And we're going to practice the skills of personal agility.
But once again, thanks, John. I'd love to chat to you for ages, but we're on a time clock here, and really appreciate your insights. It was excellent. Yeah.
Thanks, John. So you're off the hook, and I'll take over. And thank you, Nicola, as well. I know the poll is running in the background, but just while that is running, I'd like to start talking a little bit more again about the program. But I'd like to start about the partnership between DCU Business School and Harvest. So DCU Business School, John already touched on some of this earlier on, but hopefully you'll have a sense of some of the great programs that we deliver at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. But we equally do a lot of work in the executive education space. And we have a long history of providing executive training to both individuals and client organizations. And a lot of the time what we're doing is crafting bespoke solutions for those client companies. Essentially, a lot of what we're doing is making sure that the needs of individuals and the businesses and their careers are based on the latest expertise and also the industry connections that underpin our approach to education. DCU Business School, globally, we're accredited by AACSB, which is an international accreditation for top business schools in the world, and also other accreditations like AMBA for our executive MBA program. And between all of those, it means that we're in the top 5% of business schools globally. Harvest is Ireland's leading people development consultancy. They have over 35 years experience in people development. bespoke learning solutions, organizational development, executive coaching, mentoring, and digital learning. And Harvest team of highly qualified and experienced learning experts, they have an excellent track record of partnering with global brands in the area of leadership development to make them a leader in their field. So if I go on to the next slide and talk about who is this new program for, Learning to Lead in Uncertain Times. The program itself, as we've mentioned, we're offering a unique program designed for leaders seeking a global and up-to-date perspective on leadership and how to lead in an uncertain or VUCA context. So the typical participant is, you could be a head of function, a head of department in a larger organization, a C-suite leader in a small to medium-sized organization, a potential successor to the C-suite or the top team, and also people leaders with significant strategic responsibilities. So you could be in any sector, any industry vertical in the private sector. If you're any of the above, we think this program will appeal to you. In terms of the delivery team, Nicola also already mentioned this at the start. We're combining the kind of expertise between some of the best of DCU Business School and some of the best of Harvest. So you'll see there in the photograph some of my colleagues from the business school, Dr. Melrona Karan, Professor David Collings, Dr. John McMackin, who you've just seen in action there a short while ago. And equally then from the Harvest side, people like Eamon Eaton, Ailey Shreed, Mila Kleins. So together what we're doing is bringing together this fantastic team, but combined they'll be offering the most up-to-date research-based content. And that's very important. So it is up-to-date and it's research and evidence informed. And also then through Harvest, we'll have experiential sessions, making sure that there's an ease of application of the learning so that you can go back to your workplace afterwards and implement the knowledge and the skills that you've acquired during the program. So in terms of the overall program structure, you can get a sense here from an overview. The program is organized into 5 module themes, and it takes the participant through a rich learning experience of important, relevant, and practical areas. So if we dig into a little bit more of the detail on that, you can see the program structure on this slide, and you'll see there's a lot packed into this. So first of all, again, the program is comprised of those 5 modules. They're going to be run on single days every 4 weeks and finishing on 2 consecutive days. So days 9 and 10 are back-to-back. The other days will be running generally about once a month. Each day will run in the morning, starting at 9:30 a.m. and will conclude in the afternoon at about 4:30 p.m. And then over the 10-month program duration, every participant will receive, so you'll get a personalized insights discovery profile report and also an EQ profile. So that's done at the individual level. There will be 2 peer learning sessions on top of the masterclasses, 9 masterclasses days. And on those days, it includes an innovation challenge on one of the days. And also towards the end of the program, we'll be doing a crisis simulation. And also for those who might be interested, there's an optional one-to-one coaching package available if you think that would benefit you and your organization a little bit more. What you learn on the program, firstly, you'll identify what it takes to become a leader comfortable in a VUCA context with the skill sets to be effective. Secondly, it's about effectively leading a mission control leadership team. Next, it's about enhanced messaging to develop stakeholder-centric communication skills for uncertain times, and also imagining a new world of possibilities for the leader and their organization. And if we look then at the kind of specific themes and modules, module 1 is focused on leadership, self-analysis, resilience, and agility. And again, John touched on some of the aspects of agility in a very fleeting way today. So we'll go into those themes in a much deeper way on the program days. Module 2 is about leadership and leading mission control in a leadership team. We then go on to, so that would cover themes such as leading people and leading teams. Module 3 then will go into design thinking and the innovation challenge and transformational trends in global business. Module 4 is about critical communications and leadership communications in times of uncertainty. And a few weeks ago, we did again a presentation on that from Porrick McKeown, who again will be involved in the program. And module 5 then goes into group company communications, and we'll be doing that crisis communication or crisis simulation. There'll be study group touch point, and again, we'll be getting inputs from industry as well. And again, just to repeat, there'll be an insights discovery questionnaire, including the transformational leadership profile and the emotional intelligence profile as well as part of the offering. So on the next slide, it gives you a sense of the typical schedule for a module day. So you can see there in the morning, essentially what we're doing is the DCU Masterclass content, and that's about 2 hours where we go deep into some of the topics that I've just outlined. And then in the afternoon, it transfers over more into the virtual classroom, where there's be an experiential application of the course contents, discussion, collaborative group works, and so on. So within the overall program, it'll be a mix of those live virtual masterclasses. There'll be reading and cases. There'll be social learning with other participants on the program. Action learning, you'll get the personality profiling, and also we'll be bringing in guest speakers from industry to give their perspectives as well. So it's absolutely jam-packed with content, but also we think that the format of the days and the way that we've come up with the program design means that you can take all of that great experience and knowledge and implement it back in the workplace very easily afterwards. So again, if you're interested in this, the program dates will be starting early in the new year. It's 10 days of a program delivered online over 10 months. So it's mostly going to be on a particular day, Wednesdays, for each of the dates outlined. And then at the end of the program, we will conclude with 2 back-to-back days as well. So for further information, the dates there are outlined on this slide, but if you want further information, you can either go to the Harvest website or the DCU Business School website. The web pages are easy to find, they're listed here. Equally, you can contact my team or Nicola's team on the emails that are outlined, or give us a buzz, we'd be happy to talk to you. So that's it. So on behalf of myself and Nicola, and special thanks to John McMackin for his presentation today as well. But if there's anything else, we would encourage you to contact us and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you further. So with that, I think we're finished. Nicola, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just once again, thanks to everybody, and thanks to John, and thanks to all our attendees. John, there's some really nice messages coming in on our chat to say it was a very useful presentation. So there you go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. See you again soon. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.